But the one thing that I want to make sure we do, so I've got some stuff out here. We'll go through some stuff. If you have questions, I've got some notes, so I'll just kind of wing it. But we can kind of go off script, which is typically what I do anyway. But the goal with this, with your 10 and under program, we have to get out of the habit of doing activities for the kids and make sure that the activities that you do are very specific. Right, so we tend to have them, how many of you do a warm-up exercise with the kids when they come to your program? Okay, a couple of you. Okay, good. After today, you all will. Because warm-up exercises for the little kids is not necessarily jogging, stretching, and that kind of stuff. What I want you to think about with warm-up exercises is what are the activities that you can do with the kids when a racket and ball together is going to be a nightmare. It's going to be a struggle, right? So use your warm-up activities to be very specific on skills that you need to develop with the kids so that when they add the racket to it, they've already been doing this in some form, right? So we think about a basic thing would be we want the kids to do a backswing like this, right? So if we did an activity, who wants to jump out here and help? Don't worry, you don't have to have a little kid's racket. And you don't have to, I'm going to guide you the entire time. Except for when we do the mile run. Not all of you run at once. Awesome. Okay, so, oh, I put this here so that we would trip over it. If you use cones with little ones, don't use them. We don't use cones at all. We use, that's about as high as you're going to get with us, but we use dots everywhere. And that's more of a safety thing, so I'm not a big cone person. But so if we needed to do an activity where we're working on the shaping, we use a lot of these, right? So we can do little things like this where they're tossing, right? And we want them to do the shape of the stroke, right? So we want all this. What you tend to have, because we've all done, who are doing summer camps right now? Okay, so you're seeing things all over the place, right? So kids go crazy because they're not focused enough because you haven't given them a specific task. So if I want them, so you'll see this, right? You see this, right? And they're not doing what you want. So what you need to do, instead of just saying, hey, toss the ball like this, they're not going to do it. Give them a task. So I want, when you're done, your hands, your palms have to face me. So when we're done, our palms have to face like that. Right? And we want the shape. We would do this for a while. We would do the backhand. But these are the things that we would do in warm-up exercises in the skill development where we can start to do motions and movement that is similar to what we're going to do on the tennis court. So with your 8 and under or red court, depending on where you live, because a lot of places are doing different things. So we've all seen this. So let's do this one first. So we've all done this one, right? So what are we working on when they're moving from one cone to the other, taking a ball and moving it from one cone to the other? What kind of things can we work on?
Coordination.
What's that? Agility, coordination.
Dexterity.
Patterns, right? Footwork pattern, right? So basic things we can have them do is you pick it up with your right, step with your right, pick it up with your right, put it down with the left, right? We've all done these, right? So we go and have them do this. We do the crossovers. We do all sorts of different patterns. So, and we do it in a fun way. So one of the reasons, why do kids come to your program?
Because it's fun.
Because it's fun. What is fun?
The activities.
Action.
Movement.
Kids, your fun and the kids' fun are completely different. Right? They want to be challenged, they want to be engaged. They also are there. Typically what I tell people is, if you're a pro that's really cool and fun and got a great personality, but you don't know anything, you're going to lose kids. If you know everything but have a horrible personality, you're going to lose kids. Right? You have to know at least a little bit about what you're doing with the kids to help them develop, which is what's challenging. Because if we did this forever, you'd stay with me for 4 weeks and then you'd be gone. But then they're also, the reason they come back is because you're the coolest thing ever. Little kids want to be around people that are fun. So if I'm a drill sergeant with the 8-year-olds running around and going, I'll do that, I'll get back there and do it again, and just let them go. And we try to guide them as they do it. But if you become so, and this is what happens, all of us are here because we want to learn, but we end up learning so much that our personalities go out the window and we just kind of regurgitate everything we just learned. You have to keep your personality with kids, you may struggle as you get, I will never have an issue with kids because I'm usually smaller than they are. As you get taller, they get intimidated by you, right? So if you're talking with a group of kids, I would just say if you're talking to little ones like this, you would need to be down here like this, right? So as you get taller, if you're a tall person, make sure you get down with their eye or you will intimidate them right away. So we've done all these kind of patterns. We know all those kind of things. Come over here to this one. So, and I'm just showing you some of the things that we do. So I work very closely with Mike Farrell. Who knows Mike Farrell? Awesome, one person, two people. Okay, so Mike Farrell runs Evolve 9. So look up his stuff. We do a program with Mike called Evolution, which is an amazing program and curriculum. I've known Mike for probably almost as long as I've known Bill. And so we partner, and we actually have him come in and help us and train and do some stuff. So if you've ever seen Mike's stuff, some of this is similar to what Mike does. But what we start to do is, so stand in between these four. So as you start going through different patterns and exercises, what you also want to, so behind baseline, that's right, cheater. You have to start to engage the different patterns and engage memory, right? So this is an easy one. So all you're going to do is you have to come back to home base every single time. You go out and you touch the dot with your right foot, come back and come to home base after each one. Right foot, good. Right foot, awesome. Good. So what other things could we do with this? We could engage the upper body and the lower body. We can start doing those kind of things, very similar to this. But then we start to get, so my daughter broke her leg right before we went to New York last year, which was an awesome trip to go to New York with a daughter with a cast that goes up to here. So her PT that she was doing, they have the little X, right? And you just have to jump in the box. You know, you have to jump in each corner of the X. And she did that for like 2 days, and then she was bored and she stopped doing it. So what we did with her, so if you can imagine there's an X, it's very similar with what we're doing here. Right, so you have four, that's the worst X ever, but you have 4 boxes, right? So what we started to do with her, she's 7, she got a twin brother that's 7, is started calling out animals and colors and numbers. And she did it for weeks. Now she did it so long that when we took the tape up off the carpet, there's still you can still see it. She did it that long. So what she did was, this was boring, this is what PT wanted to do. This was boring. All I did was add animals and numbers and games, and she could do it for days. And then actually her brothers started to try to do it too. So what we do is we start to engage the memory too. So what I want you to do, you have to recover every single time. And I'm going to call out, let's do 2 first. I'm going to call out two colors, and you have to memorize them before you go. And then you have to do it. So you're going to do yellow, green.
Yellow, green?
Yep, right foot still. Awesome. Red, yellow. Right? You can do numbers. You could do, you're going to do 2, 4. 1, 2, 3. You could do a combination. You're going to do, we'll make it easy at first. So you're going to do yellow, 4. Right? And we can do all sorts of footwork patterns. We can add the upper body as we go. And then we probably, with this age group, would get to about 3. We would do 3 things would be the most we would want them to do, or your head's going to explode. Yep. So you're going to do, we'll keep it easy right now. You're going to do green, red, yellow. Right? So that's easy, and as they start getting harder, we can add numbers, we can add colors, we can add animals, we can mix them all in. And what we're trying to do is not just do the footwork patterns that we want them to do, but start to engage the mental side of it as well. We do the same thing as if there's a wall here. Okay, so imagine a wall here, and we would set the same colors up on the wall, so they would be in this fashion, right, like this. And we would have them engage the upper body and lower body in a different way. Because in tennis, we don't want them to do this, but we want them to be doing this. So we would have, for us, for little ones, for you, it would be up here. For the little ones, it would be down here. And we would have them do the same thing, where we would say, okay, purple, red, and they would do purple, and then they would touch red. Make sense? So we're starting to understand patterns. With this level, it's all about choices, right? So they can hit that direction, or they can hit this direction. How many of you work with red ball kids? and do it a lot. Okay, so so if you think, who knows the 5 play situations with tennis? Okay, this is how we practice with kids. This is how I do all my adult stuff. There's 5 play situations in tennis, and that's it. Baseline play, serve, return, you coming to the net, and your opponent coming in the net. That's it. Every time you go out, you have to do a version of those in some form, right? So with red court, what of those 3, there's 5, what of those 3 are we working on with red court? Serve, return, and baseline play. That's it. Don't need to practice coming to the net, don't need to do all that kind of stuff until they start to get to the point where they're getting ready to move on to an orange court. So I always pick on the person that, so Craig gets this, I'm going to pick on him, he calls me weekly and tells me, thank you. Because the hardest pro in the business is which pro? This one. We're developing tennis players so that when they get to Craig, he can nail them and get them to where they need to be. If we're not doing what we're doing, he can't do what he's doing. So he calls me weekly and goes, man, awesome job. This 12-year-old that just got up here to us, awesome. So you should be exhausted when you're done with these kids because it's not doing mind-numbing activity. Be honest, how many of you play jail? Be honest. There's more hands, I know there's more, right? How many times do you hit one ball and run in the back of the line in tennis? Never. How many times do you hit a ball and run over there and catch it? Never. You have these kids for an hour a week. Why aren't we teaching them tennis? And then it's you, because you're the coolest thing ever. You do these activities because we can make this as fun as we want. He has no idea what we're doing, but we're training him to understand footwork patterns and memory and all this kind of stuff. So when Craig gets them, he doesn't have to work on that stuff. Right? So think of it as we jail the pros at my club. How many players at my club miss or know what jail is? 0. Right? Which is why they don't miss it. Don't do mind-numbing games. Do stuff that makes sense. Right? So we do all sorts of fun patterns like that. You have a racket? Yes. Remember the goal. So if I had one thing to say, what are we doing with this level here? Is making tennis players. Right? I think Mike, I could be wrong. Mike Barrows, I think it's Mike. He says it's like baking a cake. You heard this one? It's like baking a cake. So when you bake a cake, you have to have all the ingredients and everything looks great and everything else, and then you put it in the oven, and what's it look like? Mush. It's horrible. But over time, it starts to look nice and looks like an actual cake. And that's what we're doing here. When we start doing these activities, it will look horrible. When we start doing rally activities, it will look horrible. What we tend to do, because it's in our DNA, is we close the situation. Everybody know the terms like open, closed, open? Right? So you have an open environment, then you close the environment down to work on a skill, and then you open it back up. Open meaning more live ball play than anything. Right? So you usually should start your lessons in an open situation, figure out what you need to work on, then you kind of close it down. So in a sense, what Craig was doing was more of a close when he was feeding, right? Because he's closed the situation, he's not allowing the live ball to go, so if you remember it. So that's what we want with this. We want a lot of live ball to happen. We want to close things down when we need to work on them. But, so, you head direct? Okay, so, keep things moving. So you got the orange line, sorry, so you're facing me. So how many of you have done the low? Now it's called low in the snow, high in the sky. It used to be low in the sand when I was down south. Low in the sand, high in the sky. So you did this. So you always see the kids that go out and go, hey little Timmy, you're going to do forehands. And he goes, okay. And he goes like this. Right? We've all seen those kids. Because we're teaching them stuff. This is easier for a child to do than this. Right? And then you have to relearn or teach them everything because we always want to start learning. Right? So we start out our kids on the first few days rallying, playing tennis. We don't do, so what kids want to know why and then know how. Write that down. This is different than the way we've taught tennis. We've taught tennis in strokes. This is how you do it. And then eventually you'll know why you do it, right? So how many of you have done lessons where, and I'm showing my age, where we've done lessons and we feed, and we're like, oh, we're out of time, next week we'll get to play. Because it's all about stroke production. But kids want to know why, they want to do the game, and then they want to know how I should do that, right? So, which is backwards than the way we think or the way we've taught, right? I'm going to teach you the forehand. I'm going to teach it to you. This is how it looks, and this is what you do. And then eventually I'm going to show you what you should do with it. Where kids are backwards. We would take a kid and say, hey, this guy. Can you hit that over there? Oh, that's cool. Oh, yeah. Can you do it wider? Oh, look, I can do that. And they're like, okay, so now we're going to show you why you should do that, which is if my opponent was over there and he's looking behind the yellow, you can roll it over there and you hit a win. Oh, that's cool. You want to know how to do it better? Yeah. Well, if you do it better, maybe I was starting out, I was doing it this way, where it was like this, right? And it's like, oh, now I want to learn how to do it better. Because now I know why I'm hitting that shot. Yeah, if you do it better, you hit the top spin. Now you get way off the field. But we've always told them and shown them how to do strokes instead of doing it the other way. So put your head in kids' heads. So they want to know why. So you show them how to do things, you make it fun and everything else, and as they get better, then they're going to start to want to know, how can I do that better? Right? So we would start off with rallying, and we've all done this. How many of us have done this? Everybody raise your hand. Right? Everybody does this. It's okay, but there's better ways to do it. I can do the same thing with my partner. We're going to share, so this is your corner, you've got to put your feet right on that corner. This is my corner right here. We're going to share the ball there, and it's got to bounce each time. Right? Right? This is how we do this. So when you all start off with doing this, we don't do that. We did this. Right? Does it work as well as we're doing it? No. But that's okay. But what we want to do is we want to close it down all of a sudden and say, go to the other side, let me just feed you balls, because that'll work better. Right? Let them go and do this. Let them just have fun trying to do it. We make games, it's trying to, every time we hit one, we have to make an animal noise. Woo. Good. I'm glad you did it, not me.
I don't know what animal it was.
It sounded like that. I don't know. So we're having them hit a lot of balls, and they're getting used to spacing, right? So this, just because the court's laid out this way, we can shrink it. If you do, those of you that do any kind of shuffling or skipping or any kind of that kind of stuff, it should be done on a red court. The size of the court that you're using for the kids should be the size of the court that you do your athletic skills on. Right? And I can't tell you how many times it's like, we just worked on this and everybody goes, okay, everybody run to the baseline, and the kids run to here and they go, no, I mean that baseline. And they're like, what? My head just exploded. What are you talking about? Or they'll make them jog from this line to the net when they're this tall. Like make them run from that line to the net. Right? So make it very specific to what they're doing. So what we do, the way we scale, remember, we want to try to work on several different things. What are the 3 things that we're working on the red court? Serve, return, and baseline play. So you're going to scale it however you want depending on what you're working on. But those are the 3 things that we're working on all the time, every week in some form. Right? If you're running a camp, you're not trying to do your camps like your programs. You'll lose the kids. Camps are very different. Camps should be run where you're trying to get them to learn to rally, score, and play. And that's it. By the end of the week, if they can play, then they're going to come back the following week. If they've got great forehand and a backhand, they're not coming back. So our programs, because we know that we have them for a long period of time, we want to do different things with them with the camps, and we just say, look, Monday, they're going to show up, we're going to have them play, we're going to evaluate them, see where we need to fit them, and then we're going to work on those 3 things with this group. And we're going to go. So that puts a lot of pressure on us as pros, right? Because we can't do mind-numbing things or dead activities. It's got to be very, very specific. So we do 2 activities, 2 warm-up activities that are very specific. So maybe we'll do that one week, or we'll do that one and this one, or there's all sorts of stuff, right? And I didn't bring out a ton of things because you all can do that. And then we're going to pick 3 things that we're going to do. We're really going to pick 4 things, but we're going to work on 3 of them every week. And you kind of choose which ones those are. But we know we're going to do something around the serve. Usually if we're doing serves, we're going to do the return at the same time. And we're going to do something about the baseline play. And then we have those 2 or 3 things that we're going to work on this week. How do kids learn?
Repetition.
Kinesthetically.
So kids learn by watching you, right? So how many of you have kids, little kids? Awesome, or even older kids, right? So I've been doing this forever, talking about little kids, but my oldest is 9, will be 10 next month. So there was a big span in there where I'm telling this stuff and I'm going, I hope this is right. And then I get my kids, and then I'm like, oh yeah, that is. So when I had our little ones and they were sitting and watching a movie, they would watch Scooby-Doo, and at the end of Scooby-Doo, after the 30 minutes of Scooby-Doo, what did they want to do? Anybody sat and watched movies with kids? Am I the only one that watches movies with kids? So they'll say, hey Daddy, I want to watch that again. Like, all right, let's go. And I click it, and we'll do the next Scooby-Doo. Like, no. Don't want to watch the next Scooby-Doo. I want to watch the same Scooby-Doo. So we could watch the same Scooby-Doo for months on end, and I have like 30 of them stacked up. Oh, we're gonna get this like Scooby-Doo weekend, and they're like, no, I want to watch the same one. Right? That's how kids want it. They like things that are familiar. They like to do the same thing over and over again, and they learn by watching you demonstrate things. So when you do things, make sure that everything that you do, you're showing them how to do it, you're giving them time to do it, and then you give them a long time to fail, because to us it looks ugly, but to them they're actually learning, and they'll get it. So my wife, who's a very good college player at Florida State, when we had our kids, and I'm out there teaching, and this side was tossing, and that side was hitting it, and our own son was whipping it. And everything was whip. She's like, this is horrible. Our own kids are putting this. And I was like, all right, cool. Now this side you're gonna hit and hit it to Brady and whip. And I'm like, she's like, oh, why can't we just go back to doing the old thing like that? And I'm like, because what Brady's learning to do is process things. He's looking at tracking it. He's watching the ball and seeing how it bounces. None of that's gonna happen when I do that. But is it ugly at first? Yes, very. But instead of stopping them, let them go through the process. Let them figure it out on their own. Let them hit 20, 30 balls before you decide to close it down. You can close it down for sure, but closing it down to me is a little bit different. So we've talked about the warm-up skills. We do warm-up activities. We'll do a skill development, and then we'll do some sort of competition at the end. Competition at the end for us is different than little kids at this age. This would be competition where we're a team, even though we're playing points out. So every time one of us wins a point, we're a team. We're just going to add a point, right? It's not you against me, but it's us. Yep. Make sense? Kids at this age, a lot of times when you see kids act out and they smack the racket or they do stuff, we put them in an environment that they're not ready for. And a lot of times it happens here. So you're 10 years old, very big 10-year-old, and I'm going to go put you with the 16-year-olds because you're so big. Is he mentally and emotionally ready for that? No. Physically, maybe. Mentally and emotionally, no way. But we're putting him in an environment and everybody else is going, yes! And he's going, what in the world is going on? And all of a sudden he has no idea what's going on. Right? So there's a lot that goes into it. So at this age, it's not going to necessarily be a competition against each other. But we're going to build towards that so that when we get used to the orange court, we're ready to go. So we structure, so think about video games. Who plays video games? Good, nobody, you should. So video games, why do kids love video games? Multiple lives, awesome. What else?
Levels, going to the next level.
What's that?
Going to the next level.
So you get a chance to go to the next level?
Passing stages.
Competitive? What else? So kids love video games because they're always getting rewarded throughout the entire game. There's nobody that's going to judge them. Because what happens if you fail? What do? restart, right? So there's nobody standing over there going, oh, that's a horrible shot. You just go, oh, I'll just do that, right? So there's all these things that are built in that are latching. Video games have done an amazing job with understanding how kids tick. So what we do with our program is, and what Mike has done with gamification, is we do the same thing, right? So, oh, these things are awesome. Anybody use a zig ball? So your homework tonight is to go and YouTube, I think it's called like the best 8 and under point ever, or whatever. Anybody seen that? This I think it was at Mike Barrow's club. This is the ball they used. It's called a zig ball. It's from Europe. It is extremely expensive. It comes in a bucket, but these things are awesome. So one of the things that you've got to make sure you do is balls are, so the kids, when you get an older kid out, so I was working with our competitive kids about the last 6 weeks, and I went to them and I said, all right, we're going to use I want you to use the orange ball today. And what do you think they did? Oh, this is the worst day ever. And I'm like, why? They're like, that's what little kids use. I'm like, well, here's how we're going to use it. I'm going to feed you a ball, and I want you to go in, I want you to hit a swing volley with it, and we're working on what? They're like, I don't know, this is just little kid stuff. I'm like, no, actually, we're working on racket head speed. So they moaned a little bit, and what I like to do when they moan a little bit, then I go get a different ball. So I said, guess what we're using now, gang? We're using this. Like, so now I want you, so for them to hit this ball to go pretty far, what do they have to do with their racket? They have to accelerate. So what they ended up doing is really accelerating it. They ended up having fun, and they didn't think they would. They ended up having fun, and then we go back to the yellow ball, and they are actually, racket head speed is much faster. Now, granted, it's over time. But you as coaches, these are just tools. So when that group pulled out the basket for me, like, oh, let's separate this ball. No, this is how I want your basket to look. Right? So if my student's getting it, I'm going to go, okay, let's try this. Can we do it with this ball? Sometimes we sit there and go, okay, we're gonna do an activity, and you get to choose. So maybe there's a green ball, maybe there's a foam ball, and we just put them all out there and say, okay, we're gonna do this activity. You and your partner decide which one you want to use, and see which one you can do it with. You can change. You can try to rally 4 balls, and if it doesn't work, grab a different ball. So we're giving them choices, and they'll figure it out over time which one's the easiest. And then what we do is we have, so like, you know, the Subway Surfer. Subway Surfer was my kid's favorite game forever. So I made a rule this summer is that they're not allowed to have iPads at all this summer. The first 3 days were a nightmare for dad. Now they don't even miss it. But what they do is like Subway Surfer, as they go, it's like ding, 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 ding. They get all these points as they go ding, 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 ding. So what we do is every activity that we do, we get clips. And you can, you know, these are like, you can either just do random clips, and you can say that's 5, this is worth 20, this is, I don't know, whatever, right? So they get clips, and we throw them down in the middle of the court. When Mike Barrow came to our club the first time to work with us about 2 years ago, a year and a half ago, he looked at, we have cupboards all along the wall here, and you open up the cupboards, and they're just full of that stuff. And he's like, this is like a gold mine. He's like, I've never seen so much, it's like a store. And so what we do is we have all these, so we have clips that go down on the court, and we just throw a big pile in the middle, and depending on what we want to do with them, we make sure that different colors are there, we make sure that we explain the rules and how they're going to use them, and then for like this, so you and I, let's do, look on the other side. So then we have these scorecards that say, or dice cards, you all can make them up, right? So we can use the dice or the cards. So we would say, okay, whatever you and I are going to do, let's say we're going to hit just over the net. We're going to have to hit 3. After we get 3, then we flip the card, right? So we're just going to rally and close. We're just 1, 2, 3, awesome. We would high five. We would get a clip. I guess this one, you get that one, we would put them on, and then we would flip the card over. Or you use the dice, right? We always spin it, right? So, oh, 5. A lot, right? And so there's always fun things, but what ends up happening is Now we're not having to be on one court with the kids. I can have 10, 12, 24 kids out here, and the coaches are walking around. I don't have to stay on one court. But what they're doing, why is this going to work? Because the kids are engaged. Why do kids act out? Bored. They're bored off the rocker. So whose fault is that? This is what I tell. So quick story, and not a joke. I walk out on the court. There was a pro doing a class, and I look out over the court, and I see they were standing about in the middle of the court. It was a orange ball class, so they really had to in here. And they were just standing there, and I see 3 of the 6 kids were sitting on the ground. So I walk down the stairs, and I come back. By the time I get here, one is over there, sitting down. One's here, and one is throwing balls against the backstop. And I walk out the door, and I'm almost getting whatever. So I walk over to the pro, and I go, "Hey, what's going on?" He's like, I don't know. These kids, they're in a whole, I don't know. Well, I've been standing up there, and you've been talking for like 6 or 7 minutes. Like, those kids have like a 20-second attention span, and they're gone. He's like, I don't know, I just can't. So I'm literally standing here talking to him, and all of a sudden I hear the curtain go boom. You know, like these things make this big noise when you run through it, right? It's like, boom. And all of a sudden I turn around, and here's this mom charging at me. She's like, "See this? That's my child." And he was the one throwing and hitting stuff against the thing. If he's doing that, you have every right to set him down or kick him out or do whatever you want. I'm like, "Okay, Jody, why do you think he's doing that?" She's like, "I don't know. I mean, he's been at school. He should love to be here right now." I'm like, "Do you think?" And I said, then by that time, I point over here to this kid that was kicking balls, right? All the way down to the other end. I'm like, "Hey, Jody, see that one over there? That's mine. That's my kid. What do you think's going on?" She is so red. And I'm like, "You think the kids are bored?" "Oh, absolutely. And they should be doing this." I'm like, "Well, they've been sitting at school all day. They just got here. What do you think they want to do? They want to have fun. They want to run around." "Okay, you've been watching what I've been watching?" "Yeah." Like, "Are they doing that?" "No." "So whose fault is it, Jody?" "Not the kids. It's the pros." So I said, "I'm gonna back up there. Let me handle this." So I pulled the pro aside and I just said, "Look, they're bored because of you. And this is what I tell my staff. When they act out, it is your fault because they're bored off their rocker. So you got to stop talking. You got to keep them active. When do they act out? Typically when you're talking too much and when you bring them in a group. So what we do is if you're going to get them, so like summer camps, everybody go get a drink, everybody come back and go right back to work. If you bring them into a group and they start hitting each other and talking and doing all those things, I want to do individual instruction with large groups. So I'll say, everybody go right back, Austin, got a drink, go back to where you're going, remember, you two are hitting, you're going that way, and you two are doing this, everybody does. And then I start to walk around, and I'll start to individually change what we're doing. Rather than have all 20 kids standing there for another 2 or 3 minutes. Because they're going to start acting out. Does that make sense? Why else would I want to do that? What is your job as a coach? Your job is to assess the kids. I give them a mission or a task, and then I want to see how they're doing so I can help them get better at it. Right? So when they come back out, this is a perfect opportunity for you to decide or see, do they remember what we just did, or are they starting all over? Right? So if we left hitting, I'll change these ones. So stay where you are. So we'll do red to red. So we just left before we went to get water, go red to red. And they come back out, and I want you to do red to red, and all of a sudden they're like, it's all over the place. What does that tell you as a coach? They haven't retained what you worked on. They did it, but it left them, and they haven't retained it. So what should you do? Keep working. Rather than come out and go, okay, we're going to do something completely different, right back to work. Maybe we add some little fun things to it to make it a little bit more exciting for them. But remember, fun for kids is more of a challenge than what we think. If the kids are laughing and having fun and they're high-fiving and all that, that's okay, that's good. But kids like to be challenged. So if a child is getting 7, 8, 9 in a row of something, they're going to get bored very quickly. It's okay if they're getting bored around the 4 to 6. That's okay. They like to be challenged. So what we tend to do, at what age did you, how many of us over the age of 10 is when you learned how to hit topspin? If you're my age, you probably all should raise your hand. I'm 50, right? Why? Why did I learn to hit topspin at the age of 13? Because my coaches said I couldn't do it any younger than that. How do you know? How many of us are in the mindset that I'm not going to do this with these kids? I get on my wife and she told me, she was brought up this way. Her mom would say, mom would say, she's with her grandmother. Her mom would say, hey Ashley, you want to try this? What do you think her grandmother would say? Oh, she's not going to like that. So then what would happen? She wouldn't do it. So when I met my wife thought quiche was sushi. She didn't know when sushi came out. She was like, "What's that?" I said, "That's sushi." She said, "Oh, I thought it was that flat bread stuff." I said, no. So we put ourselves in and just say, "Oh, you can't do this." When do we know kids can learn how to hit topspin? On this court. On this court. So the kids in our program, here's the guidelines for them. For you to get to orange court, you have to be able to hit basic back to professional. So we have to hit 10 balls in a row, back up behind the baseline. We have to hit 10 balls in a row where I can keep you behind the baseline, or you can keep me behind the baseline. If I hit it short, I'm doing this, that's not what we're looking for. So the parents are telling, oh, little Timmy can hit 20 in a row over the net. Well, that's great, but that's not what we're looking for. They have to hit 10 balls in a row where they can keep their opponent behind the baseline. Make sense? The next thing is they have to be able to direct it. They have to be able to hit a forehand across court, and they have to be able to hit a forehand down the line. They have to be able to do that. They have to be able to hit a backhand cross court and a backhand down the line. And the last step for them is they've got to be able to do the same thing with topspin. Doesn't have to be great, but they have to have the idea of hitting topspin in some form from corner to corner as they move. Now, as they get on the orange court, now they're going to start to add some racket head speed and everything else. But in our program, literally the first day that I got in Midland, I showed them that video that I want you to watch. I said, this is what our kids on red court should do. And they all heads exploded. I'm like, they're not. They're not going to be there. But that should what we should aspire to be. That's what we want our kids to be able to do. If it's just about rallying and bumping balls over the net, then that's where our program had. We used to have some of the best juniors in the country come out of Midland, and we lost our way with this. Why do I say this is your lifeblood? Because if you don't fix this, you're going to have this with your competitive kids. You're going to have some that come through. This should be your mass. You should have hundreds of kids here, and you will always have a rec side, you will always have a competitive side, and they will split eventually, and you know the numbers are going to shrink, right? I don't remember, you all may know the number, but I don't remember the percentage, but we know that almost all kids, or a high percentage of kids, are leaving all sports, not just tennis, all sports between the ages of 12 and 15. So if you have a junior program that has 20 kids, by the time they get to 12, you'll be lucky if you have 2. So you want tons of kids here, and they'll work their way out. Yeah, I like to be competitive, like maybe I don't. But if we can get them to understand how to be competitive in a sense on these courts as they get from orange and green and onto yellow, they will stay with you even more because they understand how to play the game rather than strokes. Make sense? So then we would do patterns, right? So we showed you how, so our goal is maybe, we have to keep, we're working together, and we have to go until we get 3 that get inside the service line and the baseline, right? So if I hit it, so it's done, awesome, there's 1, there's 2, count that because I need it, there you go, 3, right? So we're trying to get 3 in here. We can do patterns, so I'm going to hit the red, you're going to hit the red, I'm going to hit the yellow, you're going to hit the yellow. So some of you may go, there's no way these kids should be doing this on this court. Absolutely should. right? So I'm hitting to the down line, he's hitting cross court. How many of the kids at your clubs can do this on this court?
At what age are you talking about? 6 to 8? Because we do a lot of stuff with 4 to 6 year olds on the red courts. Are you talking more about on the
closer? They get a little bit higher.
Okay, so you're talking about closer to 8.
Yeah, I mean we're still using this setup, and a lot of these still things at 4 to 6. But a lot of the stuff we'll do to scale. Some of you do. How many of you do these things where you put the dots up here like this, and you have them rally up here like this, right? Try to bump it over the net. This is super hard for kids. This is harder than you think. It's easier to do without a net because we're hitting almost straight up. This is way too close for kids. It should be back a little bit and have them do it from here. So even though you think you're making it easier by getting closer, this is actually really difficult to do. Okay, but yeah, we do scale. We'll do different areas of the court. Remember, we use a lot of the lines, so we'll block off areas. We'll do challenges. There's all sorts of stuff you can do. This is what, how many of you do these? Right, we use this a ton. So this will be for the kids, the 4 to 6, because they're not going to be able to hit it over a net. But we want them to have the visual of a net. So now we can do rally games or whatever we're doing, where if the ball goes under, it's okay, we're still going. Right? A lot of times with the 4 to 5 year olds, we'll have them on the same side. It's all about rhythm and understanding the movements and the skill, not necessarily doing it over a regulation court right at first, but we do a lot of stuff like that. Questions on some of the stuff that we just did?
If they're not having success from farther back, is it okay to move them up? Because if kids don't have instant success pretty fast,
right?
Then they get disappointed with us. Is it okay to move them up?
Why do you think that?
Is it because of us? I want you to get over.
Yeah. But can you, instead of saying, so like if little Timmy comes up to me, remember what we talked about, and says, yeah, I can't get it. All right, well, what can make this better? What can make this easier? I don't know. You want to try a different ball? What's that? Yeah, you can do toss and catch. Yeah, we haven't done some of the basic stuff, so like a lot of times that's a basic, so he would do a ground stroke and I would toss, and maybe they would trap it, all those kind of things. But even at this level, if we're hitting, and we're not successful rallying, see if it's a different ball, right? So what you'll see a lot of times is kids start to push, as you start to say, okay, I want you to try. So if I get a different ball, I have to give that a lash to get it to go. You can scale it down, you can shorten the court if you want. So some of the things that you can do, I always make notes when I'm in the plane. So some of the things that you can do with, and I can send you all this. So some of the things that I wrote down, if they're struggling with it, so we call them filters. So scoring can be what we're doing right now, right? So you have to get 2, you have to get 4. It could be like we're competing against each other, whatever. So if they're struggling, you can change the scoring. You can change the equipment, which is what I just talked about, right? You can change, and it could be a racket too, right? So the older kids. It could be the space, right? So we can shorten up the area that we're hitting to. We could, maybe you're better than I am. So you are doing the same thing. You actually, you have to hit everything to the yellow, but I can hit it anyway. Make sense? So there's filters that you all have that say, can you keep the same skill, but I change or the same skill development that you're working on, but I change the filter a little bit to make it easier or harder to help them. But I wouldn't go too far down, because remember, kids want a challenge. So if all of a sudden we put them in an environment where they can hit a bunch in a row, that's just as boring as them, or frustrating as for them.
So try to play games maybe where they get a ball, they hit it over, they get to pick up one, put it in the basket or something, and do teams, just to make it fun.
Yeah, I mean, yes, we move pretty quickly past that though.
Yeah, you'd like to. Yeah,
right. So because what we're finding, and again, it may be just without chemical being in Midland, you never know with all those chemicals going around. They may just be. But we find that challenging the kids and moving them through these things pretty quickly, they actually get it. By keeping them down to where we're really just trying to do that skill and get them successful, it has been taking them longer to get it than if we really just kind of keep moving them through, changing up the different filters, and then moving back to what we're
you're saying show them way ahead of time what's expected.
Yeah.
And then their job is to strive to get there.
Yeah. And remember what I said. So remember, like our programs take time, right? So to be able to rally like we just did, like the X drill or whatever, it's going to take time, but we want them to get used to it. So no child should go from red court to orange court without at least getting a taste of orange with the ball, the options that you need to work on, so volley and all that kind of stuff. We don't want to just take it from here to here. But what we've done by telling our pros is these are the skills that they have to have before they leave here. And so now we put the pressure on the pros to say, wow, I don't have time to do the little jails. I can, right? Especially if they're with you one time a week. And so you're seeing that the kids actually are doing really well with it. So and again, I always look at my notes and then I start writing stuff down when I get on the plane. It's like, oh, I need to tell them this stuff. So here's just in a nutshell. On the red court, they're very me-focused, which is why you probably shouldn't be working on doubles. Right? Everything's me. It's my world. It's my ball. It's my everything. And all of this other stuff doesn't really make sense to them at first. They copy things, which is how they learn. So they watch you do it, and then they try to copy it, which is why you have to demonstrate everything. They understand things they can see, which is why demonstrate rather than talk. Tactically, it's themselves and the ball. That's really about it at the beginning. So the 4 to 6 year olds, as they go through that stage, it's all about very basic stuff. As they start getting on to, remember what we talked about, it's the why first, then the how. Here's why you do this, and here's how you're going to do it. Then they start to get orange, they start to feel judged. Right, so when they make a mistake, they start to feel bad, which is why we've got to make sure that kids aren't in the habit of doing something wrong and then quickly looking at mom and dad. That's not a good sign, right? They understand the nature of what an opponent now means. They also understand the difference between just kind of going through the motions and effort, and starts to understand a little bit more about the tactical side. So remember with tennis is a game of keep away. Right? So when you're teaching the kids to do something, what we tend to do, so like the drill we showed at first where we did this, we would do that for a little bit. So we toss back and forth, but then I want them very quickly to do the exact same exercise, but now we're trying to keep it away from each other, which is what tennis is, right? So I want to run that up there, and I get ready, and then it's just cool, and then go to that, right? And we're trying to keep it away, rather than continuing to do for a long period of time where you're actually just tossing it to each other. Make sense? Yeah.
Just a question about creating the culture of this kind of learning environment. So often kids will come in, they're out of control, they come from school, they have tons of energy, they just hit the trigger, now they're going. Right. So what have you done to establish a culture where they come in and say, this is the way we do class, this is the way we learn, and the new kid comes in and watches and says, I want to be part of that culture. How have you created that?
A lot of it, believe it or not, is with the coaches, right? So a lot of the stuff that we talked about is when the kids come out on the court, here's step A, B, C that we want you to do. First thing is quick attendance. The next thing is get them doing the skill set or the warm-up activity. So that when the kids come, like I said, remember we have 4 sets of warm-up activities that we're rotating 2 in each time. So after 2 weeks or 3 weeks, they know what we're going to do. We can sit there and say, we are doing animals, go. And they go. And we've got the coaches, right? We have volunteers to help. But the culture is, the pros have to start to lead it and get kids to do it. And then as the kids start to join in, what we tend to do as coaches is we talk a lot, like I'm doing right now, which I hate to do. What I told, so we have a really good pro that goes to our schools. She'll go out into the schools and she'll bring 100 kids from the school and do a tennis pizza and a movie. But then what happens from there to get them into our programs, it drops way down. We probably don't even retain 30%. So what's happening with her is when she goes to the schools, she is the coolest thing ever. She's got a lesson plan. She knows what she's doing. And when she goes to school, she's doing 45 segments, like 6 of them a day, and she's nailing it. Then she comes out, and then they try our program, and what ends up happening is they don't have a lesson plan, and they go out and try to win it. And so now what they're worried about, instead of being the coolest coach ever and getting kids into spots, they're trying to figure out what they should do. And so the culture in that sense now, because nobody's really has a plan, and I have my assistant coaches, which I haven't shared anything with because I don't know what I'm doing, right? So the coaches have to have lesson plans when they go on the court, and it's all the same. And it's very specific. It's not, we don't do cookie cutter. It's not when you look down the road, all 24 kids are doing the same thing. They may be working on ground strokes, but this group may be doing something completely different than the other groups. But it's just that we get them going when they get out there, so the culture for the kids and the parents is, you see the parents show up and go, Timmy, get out there, quick, they already started going. Where it used to be where it was, oh yeah, maybe they come in 10 minutes late, they know that we're getting going. And you're with us for an hour, and if you're not there. So it's the pros, I think, started that. That's kind of the kids and the parents actually see that. Yeah. Very good question.
Right.
Yeah. So here's how we've structured our program. So we want the masses to be out on the court because the masses sell your program. So as soon as they look out there and they go, man, look, there's 24 kids out there. If there's 24 kids, something's got to be happening. So then they want to join, right? So what we've done is we've done a couple different things. We have volunteer parents. We want the parents to come out. Why are parents the nightmare parents? Because they're not informed. Because you're not sharing information with them. Parents just want to know, right? Especially that you probably deal with it a whole different, but it's the same thing. The parents will call you and get on you and get upset about stuff because they don't know what you're trying to do with the child, right? So we bring them out and show them what you're doing. And this is what we're working on, and this is how you can do it at home. Then we also have our ETA program, which is our competitive kids. They actually we have a volunteer program within it. So we give them discounts on certain things if they, and more like a mentorship for them to come down and help with the little kids. So we have that. And then something that I was talking with Mike Farrell just recently in the last couple of weeks is he wants to work with us on going out into the school systems because kids need community service hours, is working with the school systems to open it up to anybody in Midland or the surrounding Great Lakes Bay to come and get community service hours with us. He has volunteered, we talked about, he has volunteered to come in and train everybody for free to learn how to get on the tennis courts with us. So what will that do? That opens it up to kids or maybe even some college kids that have never been to our tennis center, never worked with kids, in hopes of also getting the schools, the high school kids, to actually come and start working with us. So we've got a couple different things that work. One of the coolest things, though, is the parents. And I know most of us are like, oh, I don't want those parents on my court. But one last thing before I let you go. Any other questions? I'll be around. But one thing, boys and girls, I just want you to know a little bit about the boys and girls. Boys and girls are completely different in their mindsets and why they're there. Don't try to stay away from lumping them together. So if you pair them up, you shouldn't try to, like at this age, I very, very rarely match kids up. Let them do it on their own, right? So like girls will want to be with girls, boys will tend to want to be with boys, siblings will want to be with siblings. So the first day that my kids were in our program, had boy-girl twins, they separated the two, and what happened? They lost it. They're crying and everything else. They're 5 years old. They're because it's like they want to be together. So what I do is say, okay, everybody grab a partner. All right, put your toes next to each other, awesome, and then we go from there, and then we start to help. But don't sit there and say, okay, all the boys, you're going to be with this one, you're going to be with that one, because that's not something that they like. But boys like to stand out. Boys are task-oriented and problem solvers. They like that part of it, so the stuff that we're doing today, they love. Winning is more important to the boys than relationships. Right? So when my two boys play each other, when they were on the red court, now on the orange court, they don't care. They're going to battle. Girls like to fit in. That's important to them. Relationship oriented, which is why the Williams sisters do not like to play against each other. It's about relationships. So the girls come to the class to make friends. They don't want to compete against each other. Right? So relationships to them are more important than the winning. So since as you know that, hopefully you write it down. If not, I'll send you all this stuff. If you know that, be very careful on how you structure your programs, how you separate the kids, and what you're trying to gain out of activities with boys compared to girls, because we know they're in it for different reasons, which is okay, but we've been teaching tennis for 200 years, grouping everybody together and trying to make strokes rather than players and all this stuff, but we just have to have a different mindset. Make sense? And kids will have a ball on their court. Tomorrow, we'll talk more about how you do some stuff on the orange court and green court, move through the play situations, and how you do things with, instead of just feeding balls, how we can do things and so that you're roaming around rather than tied to your basket. We don't want that anymore. We want you active. Cool? Questions? I know there's a ton of information. I probably didn't even get to half my slides. But
the kids know that they have to do so many forehands. They got to cross court and down the line. You've got to set things to go from the red to the orange. They know what they have to do to go to the next.
Yep. So we have what's called mission cards that we show to the kids and to the parents. We give those out about 4 times a year. That is very specific, right? So you're doing baseline maintain. Here's where your issues are. We have boxes that they color in, or that the pros color in, that shows them how far along they are. And when they get the majority of those boxes, there's 4 in every category. And when they get to the stage where they've filled in almost all of those, then we start having the conversation of getting them used to orange court before we move.
You didn't bring those with you, did you?
I may have them in my bag. I'll take a look at it. But that gives you an idea of, yes, it's not subjective. It's here's what we know that the kids can do on this court. Here's what we have to have them do to get to the next court. Yep. And again, parents that will get upset is because you're not sharing that information. Yeah.
Off the top of your head, you've got an average or typical age when kids move from red to orange.
We don't. So if the pros are doing the stuff that they're doing, there are kids that will move relatively quickly if we're challenging them. You'll find out there's all of a sudden you're not challenging the kids, and all of a sudden you put like my son, the 7-year-old, has been on red for a long time, has been getting bored. So summer camp moved into orange and rocketed with that. So what that tells me is he's not being challenged enough on red with the activities that we're doing. That when he got to orange courts, he already had the skills, but we just weren't doing enough with him here. So he started excelling.
Bring it back up top with whoever gets it last.
The mission cards are very specific. So it's not this group that we're setting. We're setting a lesson plan for the group that I can go down and say, okay, you need to work on this, you need to work on this, you need to work on this, rather than just a lump statement. So we're very specific. So they move through.
Can I ask the same question? How long does it take you to move a kid from red to orange?
So our program is structured so that on red court we give them about a year and a half. Right? It doesn't mean that that's what will happen, because you'll get kids in 8 months, some in 2 years, but the program is designed for that. If that's a different way to answer it. We've structured it so that when we show the parents, we can sit there and say, little Timmy will probably be in this